Hey guys, Jake again. It's been a while, but we're getting to that warmer weather again this spring, so I'm hoping to try to do some more videos. Um, and to start things off, I figured I'd go through my new bag. Um, there's been some changes. I've added some new discs, and obviously now that we're moving into warmer weather, I throw more drivers in there, and just the types of plastics might change a little bit. So we'll do another one here, and then probably one midsummer as things start to heat up. But yeah, for now, let's just get into it. So to start with, most important discs in the bag, putters. I bag two putters. The first one you're familiar with, Electron Envies. I do keep for everything in my bag. I tend to have a lot of backups, and I try to rotate through all my discs. So show you a specific disc, odds are I'll be throwing one of. So here's one Electron Envy behind me. I've got a whole stack of other Electron Envies. So it'll be one of those in my bag at any given time and rotating through them all. So just keep that in mind. Anyway, Electron Envy. This one's soft. I do throw soft or medium, depending on the weather and how I'm kind of feeling. But yeah, usually these guys are my Circle 1 putters. And yeah, just a good, reliable putter, overstable. Not too much new to say about that. What is new is I added the Pilot to my bag. Yeah, it finally put in some time with it and found out I absolutely love this disc, and now I use it a ton, and it's replaced a lot of my Envy shots, which is something I never thought I'd see. But I do have about 50-50 Envies and Pilots now to the bag. So the Envy's still in there. It's still my baby, but the Pilot has taken up a lot of the work that it used to do. So as far as putting goes, I putt with, this is a medium Cosmic Electron, but I have some soft electrons as well. But in general, whatever Electron Pilot is feeling good that day. These are my Circle 2 putters. They just tend to, they float a little bit more. They tend to hyzer out a little bit less, so they're nice for those long floaty bids. So yeah, see me throwing a lot of Pilots now. So if we move now into the approach discs, probably my favorite category, something you're very familiar with, is the Envy. I keep one premium plastic Envy in the bag. This one has a Neutron Soft. I really like it for sort of the short hyzer, skip into the basket kind of shots, or low sliding shots. The Envy has really good ground play, and it's just one that I'm very familiar with, so I get a lot better accuracy for approaching with nice little hyzer shots. So it's sort of my default comfort disc to throw. But alongside that, I now also have a premium plastic Pilot. This one it's got more glide, but it also sits down wherever it lands. It doesn't tend to slide much. So this is my disc of choice if I'm going straight at the basket, or if I really want it to just settle down. If there's like some danger behind the basket, I'll throw a premium plastic Pilot. They do have a little bit of fade at the end, but it's a lot less pronounced. But yeah, just a fantastic disc. Use that a lot. All right, as we move along here, this one you'll remember. This is Old Yeller, my beat up Electron Soft Envy. This thing is still the flippiest disc in my bag. Nice little turnover shots or hyzer flips, things like that. Just a very good, reliable disc. Doesn't see as much use now, but it's still, if I really need something understable, I'll reach for this guy. And to kind of complement him, I also now have this beat up Pilot in Electron Soft. This guy is sort of the same idea. It's getting a little flippier. It's still straighter than the Envy, but it does turn a little bit, and it's really nice for those sort of touchy anhyzer short up shots, things like that, where I want to make sure it holds the ante the whole way, and make sure it settles down next to the basket. It's also good for tunnel shots because it's so soft. If it hits a tree, it'll tend to stop and drop versus careening off into the woods somewhere like some of the premium plastics do. So, or the stiffer plastics, I should say. So this is also a fantastic, highly used disc. And last of all, for my approach discs, I throw a premium entropy. This is essentially like a zone or harp or any of the other overstable putters. Great for forehand flick up shots. Occasionally I'll use them for like a backhand where I really want it to fade hard to get around a corner or something. But primarily it's for sort of scramble shots that I don't want to flex too hard out right away. Or if I want them to kind of go straight at the basket, this is a great disc. That's pretty much my approach, which is a huge part of the game. You know, everything under 300 feet essentially is this top part of the bag. And around where I play, that's the vast majority of the holes. So that's the real important part. But now we'll move into the main section where I have, you know, mids and up, and those are pretty much anything 300 feet and out is when I'll start looking for something below the top part of the bag. So first off, look at mids. I've got 4 mids. I don't throw a ton of mids, but I do love the few that I have. For understable shots, I throw a beat-up Electron Matrix still. I'm still kind of hunting for a replacement that I can buy in premium plastic that'll be this flight sort of right off the shelf, so that if I do lose these, I don't have to worry about beating up a new matrix. But for now, they're really nice, and I do like the grip of the Electron plastic too. So it's a fantastic disc. I just kind of want a backup alternative that I really like too. So we'll see. But for now, the matrix. The next disc up would be my reactor number 1. This is my first reactor I ever bought. It's pretty beat, I guess, as far as my mid-ranges go now. So it's actually very, very straight. Goes pretty much no turn, no fade, just laser beam. If there's a headwind or if I really crank on it, it will turn over a little bit now. But most of the time when I'm throwing it, it's for those super dead straight shots. And I do like the ground play on these. They tend to settle and slide a little bit. So sometimes I'll choose that if I really want to get a good skip or slide at the end. So yeah, that's the reactor. They also have good glide. I also bag a second reactor that's in a little bit better condition. This one's starting to get a little beat up, but I try to keep one fresh one in the bag as well, just because these, when they're fresh, they have a nice little fade at the end. And I kind of want a disc that still does that, so I'll keep one beat up reactor and one sort of fresh reactor in the bag, just to sort of have both those shots. And last of all, for mids, I have a Pyro. The Pyro is a great utility disc. I don't tend to throw it straight up backhand very often, but it's great for flex shots, forehand out of the woods, and like grenades and skip shots and all kinds of crazy stuff. So yeah, it's a super great utility disc. It's sort of like the next level up from the entropy. So this thing will fade harder, it'll fly further, things like that. But yeah, great disc. And that's the mid-ranges. So next up, take a look at these fairways. First up, disc that you've probably seen before if you've watched these, is my Neutron Relay, my most beat up old one. This one's getting pretty flippy. Great for hyzer flip shots or big turnovers out to like 330 feet, something like that. Just a really great, reliable disc, especially in the woods. To go along with that, I also have a newer Cosmic Neutron Relay. This guy's going to be a little bit more overstable. It'll tend to fly more straight. It does turn a little bit, but it also fades out. It's not going to hold that turn very long. But this is actually really, really nice for forehands. So it's a very straight disc. When I throw a forehand, I can get good long shot without having to put a lot into it. So I kind of, again, sort of like the reactors, I like to have one that's really beat up and one that's a little bit fresher, because they just kind of have just different enough lines. Sort of new to the bag is the Crave. I don't throw this a ton, and it's kind of a unique disc. If I throw it full power, it'll do a nice big S shot, turn over for a while and then fade all the way back. But I don't tend to throw these full power. Most discs I do. I prefer to throw the same power on every disc and just use a different disc to get different lines. But the Crave, I really like to be able to power down throw maybe 75%. So it's actually really good for those shots where you have an uncomfortable sort of stance where you can't throw full power, like there's a tree near you or something that's kind of awkward. But this disc, if you power down, will fly just perfectly dead straight for a long time and then just have a nice little predictable fade at the end, and it glides forever. These things are a little domey, but man, do they fly, just keep going. It's great. So I can put a little bit less power on them, but still get the same 330 feet of distance that I would with some of the other fairway discs that I throw. So yeah, kind of unique. Doesn't get a huge amount of use, but it's really nice to have when I need it. Last of all, new to the bag since last time is the Volt. I've thrown Volts in the past, but they're really inconsistent. Some were understable, some were like beefier than any Firebird or Fireball I've ever thrown. But these new Bendy James ones, I managed to snag one and have been in love with. This thing is so straight. It just flies forever, and then just gentle little fade at the end. In a headwind, it doesn't have the fade, so it just sort of straight to the ground, perfectly, no turn, just laser beam straight. And you can also throw them on really nice long flexes. Just a gentle flex, it'll hold it for almost the entire flight, and then just gently sort of flex back out to flat at the end. Really, really liking this. Didn't think I'd put it back in my bag. It seemed like it had a lot of overlap, but now it's just so comfortable for certain shots. I tend to throw it a lot, so it kind of shares a lot of time with my Teslas now. But yeah, so that's my fairway. So next up from fairways is a category that I like to call it control drivers. I know a lot of people use those two terms interchangeably, fairway and control driver. I sort of, there's a minor semantic difference in my mind. A fairway for me is something that I want to throw with accuracy more so than I'm aiming for distance. Like, I'm obviously trying to throw it further than a mid-range, but it's really focused on the accuracy part of it. Whereas a control driver, I feel, is more about the distance than the accuracy, but there's just enough thought of, I want to keep this in a specific place on the fairway, versus like a max distance driver where I'm like, open field, just hit it as hard as I can, wherever it lands, who cares, so long as it goes far. So it's a small distinction between the two, but in my mind, it makes sense as a separate category, so I just call them that. So anyway, control drivers. First up, I've got a Fireball. It's essentially the same as a Firebird, or like a Predator, or whatever your overstable fairway driver of choice or whatever. I don't throw this guy hardly ever. I think I've thrown it a half dozen times total. It's just very situational. It's pretty much, if I have a ripping headwind, this is the one that I trust to never turn over. Or if I need a very consistent skip shot or something that's a little longer than like my Pyro can do, I'll tend to reach for this guy, or a forehand that I can't afford to turn over, something like that. But yeah, usually I'll reach for a Pyro before I will reach for a Fireball. So it may pop out of the bag depending on the weather conditions and what course I'm playing. But I do kind of like to have one, this sort of flare. Just more of a comfort thing than anything, just to know I have it. But yeah, so Fireball. The next one that we're familiar with, the Tesla. I love the Tesla. It's overstable to the point where it's consistent, but not so far that it's unusable. It gets a lot of distance still. So this disc will fly perfectly dead straight a very long time, and then it will sort of dump hard at the end. So sort of like I was mentioning, the Volt is very, very straight with a gentle fade. This is a little bit more pronounced fade. And because I get it in the super board flat plasma, it doesn't really turn much. If you get it in like Fission or Neutron or some of the other ones, they eventually develop turn, more than like a Volt. But these ones tend to seem to stay very, very straight. So I've been really liking these guys for getting just that little bit extra distance, or if I really want to hook around a corner, or I just really want to make sure it comes back at the end, I'll still throw my Teslas a lot. the Insanity, the Cosmic Neutron Insanity specifically. This guy is a great straight disc. If I throw it not quite max power, so if I'm trying to throw a tunnel or something, this guy can get a little bit more distance than like a relay. Also, it's a great forehand like a relay, same kind of shots right there. But if I do power all the way up on it, it's just a nice gentle turnover, and it holds it almost all the way. So yeah, it's sort of very similar to my relays, just a little bit longer. So I want to go a little bit more distance, I'll go with these guys. Also, if I want to make a big rip uphill, this guy is the way to go because I know it's not going to fade out immediately, and it's not so understable that it's going to turn and cut. It's pretty much just going to fly perfectly straight uphill. So great disc to have. And last, a lift. This guy kind of comes in and out of the bag. I think it's the same number as the Insanity, but it technically flies different for me. This is a flippier disc, so it's great if I want to throw a turnover that I definitely know isn't going to come back, or if I have like a tailwind, or if I want to get a little bit more glide and power down. It's pretty similar. So as I mentioned with the reactors and the relays, I kind of have like a beat-in and a fresher disc because they fly a little different. I kind of treat this lift like a beat-in Insanity. I don't know why I don't just use a beat-in Insanity. I have some, but this thing just has a little bit more glide because it's a little bit domier. That it's like a better beat-in Insanity. So I use the lift instead, at least for now. But I don't often need this, so it really doesn't see a ton of use. It is nice if I want to hyzer flip something a long ways though, because it will stand up to flat and glide long ways. So I don't tend to think of it a lot. And the last category, max distance. So we'll start with the Photon, Cosmic Neutron Photon, max weight. In normal conditions, this guy is a friggin' beefcake. But when you have a rip and headwind, this is my maximum distance disc because it cuts through the wind really, really well and holds up to the wind really, really well. So it might turn a hair, or if it does at all, but mainly it'll just go perfectly straight and hyzer out at the end. It's sort of like Tesla kind of flight into like a 30-mile-an-hour headwind. So it's just a great disc to have for that scenario, and I, for whatever reason, come across a lot of wind lately, so it gets more use than you'd expect. My most used long distance driver would be the Trace slash the Photon. The Trace and the Photon are very, very similar, especially if you're talking about the Fission Photon. They're almost the same disc. So this is a disc that's going to have a gentle turn and a nice predictable fade. Nothing mind-blowing either way. Like it's sort of, I don't know, whatever, like a -1-2, the classic, Wraith or whatever, Destroyer. I think they're all kind of those same numbers. But anyway, it goes a long ways, and the Trace is a little bit domier than a Photon, so it feels like it gets a little bit more glide. So I've been throwing these, and then also within the wind, I can get these guys in heavier weights than the Fission Photons usually, so it's kind of nice to have that extra heft behind it when it's fighting wind. But I kind of interchangeably use those discs. But anyway, for long sort of straight-ish flight with an S-curve along the way, I'll reach for a Trace usually. A disc that's new to my bag that I thought would never make it is the Wave. I have a Fission Wave now. I just never could get a Wave to fly in any way that I wanted, and I managed to snag one of these Dan Fairhurst Fission Photons, thinking, I just got to give it a try. Everybody loves the Wave. I don't know why I said Photon. The Fission Wave is just the one you always hear people talking about, and I was like, all right, maybe there's something special about the Fission. Turns out there is. The Fission just flies a lot more, in a more useful way for me, because while it still has that same massive turn over. Like it's definitely going to turn on you. It also has some fade at the end, so it comes back. The other waves I have never really wanted to come back. So you'd throw them on a super steep hyzer, they'd flip all the way up and over and then just roll. Like they'd never come back. This will flip all the way up and almost all the way over, and then it'll start to fade back and come all the way over, back the other way. So you can get a lot of distance out of them, big distance lines. This one is starting to take a little abuse though, so it's starting to get flippy. So I may end up just using this for tailwinds, or maybe uphills if I want to turn it over on an uphill shot or something. But it's not completely useless. And honestly, the wave would be amazing for a lot of people, especially if you don't have the same power, or if you like to, power down on your discs and have different flights that way. The wave it's an amazing disc. It really does go a long ways. It's just that when you get to a certain power level, it's just too flippy. So, yeah, I'd recommend giving the Fission Wave a try. We'll see how long it stays in the bag. Last but not least, the Mayhem. Still throwing these. Previously, I said it's very unpredictable when the wind is not perfectly calm, and so I don't throw it a ton. But I recently picked up 2 new max weight Mayhems, this plasma one and a neutron one, that fly way more predictably so far in the wind. So these guys, I can actually throw them where I would normally throw my trace or my fission photons, and they will fly pretty much the same lines, just a nice gentle turn, but the fade is a little bit less, so it's a more gentle fade back. And then they obviously just go a little bit further, being that they're 13 speed or whatever. So actually these come out more often now than my trace does when I'm going for max distance. So we'll see. Maybe they'll replace it. If they all stay this consistent, I might not even need that 11 speed max distance. We'll see. But for now, I kind of bag them both and use them interchangeably. But yeah, that's my max distance. So that's my bag. We'll probably do another one of these in the midsummer or whatever when I've had a chance to throw some more. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed that. If you like any of my content, feel free to subscribe. I'll be trying to do some more stuff here. I'd like to do a couple more reviews. I've had some requests on reviews. Some field work stuff I'd like to do. I'd like to do some course reviews, maybe some playthroughs with some other people. We'll see. I'm going to try to get some more content out because it's been a while. But yeah, hope you enjoyed, and I guess we'll catch you in the next one.